The Bloody Podcassacre with Zac Walters and Kennedy Catherine.
They're back. They're coming to get you, Barbara. Welcome back
to the Bloody Podcassacre
with Zac Walters
and Kennedy Catherine.
It's weird that we said our own names for once.
Yeah, I didn't like it.
Oh, well.
Now we know.
We hope you had a wonderful
Christmas,
and
New
holiday
Year's
season, everything that you celebrate, non-denominational holiday.
We hope that 2021 is better than 2020.
We're really, really praying on this one. Not religious, but we be praying. We hoping, we manifesting.
I have been speaking things out loud lately. Do you do that?
Sometimes. It depends on, I guess, what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I won't just, think random thoughts out loud, but, I guess thinking random thoughts out loud is just talking. Science, the more you know.
When you're trying to manifest something, will you say it out loud? I do too.
I won't just be like, I have to remember to clean the blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But, if I'm trying to manifest something, yes. And write it down, because that's always good, too.
Burn it? That seems like not a good idea.
Yeah, it feels like that's just counterintuitive.
Is that?
Nope.
Okay.
Counterproductive is what I wanted to say.
But then you're releasing it.
You're releasing it by writing it and letting it out in the world in general.
That's true.
And which has no way, shape, or form on what we want to talk to you about today.
Mm-mm. So, we hope you guys enjoyed Krampus. Zac sure did not.
By the end of it, we really came around.
And now we're back. We're better than ever. And we're ready
to dive into one of the most iconic
films of all time.
Even outside of horror. Truly.
So, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. That was so
That's
rude.
Okay.
And
Don't apologize.
Can I?
You're going to go. Okay, great. One.
Okay.
Thought maybe we could try talking at the same time.
Are you going to try to feel out what I'm
going to
say? I bought a microphone. Please.
Stop. Please.
Amara
bought.
Stop it! I'm going to
kill
us both. Are you done?
Amara bought you a microphone.
Well, Amara bought us a
microphone.
And it has this button that just says something like effects.
And does it just roll through them?
But all it does is echo. Do you know how hard that is? To try to talk while your own voice is echoing back to you? I can't do it.
Have you ever played the speech jammer game?
No.
You have over-ear headphones, right?
I do.
Next time we're around them, I'm going to download the speech jammer app. Because what it does, it plays what you're saying into your ears, but it delays it.
On a delay, yeah.
But it's so hard because that's all you hear is it. That's all you hear. But then you're trying to form a sentence, but you're getting caught up in the word you said before. So you're like, and you're just stuttering.
Yes.
I mean, it's no different than how I speak every other day, but...
But that's what the microphone does. I can't
Is it the carpool karaoke one or just a generic?
I don't know.
I think you would know if it was the carpool karaoke one. It would probably say carpool karaoke microphone.
Oh, then no, it's not that. It's a wireless gold microphone.
Yeah.
It's been featured in my Instagram stories a lot lately.
Yeah, and on your Twitter. It's really the star of your social media.
Okay, well, story that nothing else is happening in my life. It's either a microphone, this podcast. That's it. So.
The Exorcist.
1978.
What
I was going to say, actually, was that we had a second in Hereditary where we mentioned that The Exorcist was up for awards. And we said Best Picture. It was not up for Best Picture.
Okay. It just won sound, or what did it win? Did it win anything?
It did. Best Writing, Best Adapted Screenplay, and Best Sound Mixing.
Good. Good for them. Really set the bar for what horror is today.
They did. This movie is basically the formula for horror going forward after this.
Because prior to that, nothing really did what it did. It didn't shock audiences. You don't hear about anything pre-Exorcist in the world of horror. Now you do because people have access to so much horror. Mm-hmm. But there was nothing that was the global phenomenon that was The Exorcist.
And things that you hear now about movies, we've talked about this, how La Llorona?
Yeah, the curse. Yeah.
Yeah, that, I think The Conjuring, when it first came out, they do a lot of marketing around it to make it sound like people were fainting in the theaters.
Yes, getting sick, possessed, et cetera, et cetera.
clearly untrue in this day and age. But I think with The Exorcist, that really was the beginning of all of that.
They did such a great job. But the wild thing is, like, with things like The Conjuring and all of these new movies, they did the marketing, but I think The Exorcist got it marketed itself. The world marketed it for them. They didn't do any of this. It just happened.
There's no way they could have known to do that. Basically,
and know that that would be the outcome to draw viewers into that movie.
Right. Like I said before, this kind of created the formula for it because of the outcome of the movie, which they couldn't have predicted.
The blueprint.
Was so...
Sorry, I just had to jump in and say the blueprint.
No, it was so successful.
Yeah.
We have The Exorcist to thank for so many things.
So many. We've said it once and we'll say it again. It is the be-all, end-all. This was my first time watching it. Wow. It holds up.
Really does. I got to have an experience with this movie that I hold near and dear to my heart. I said that like an old weathered. Let me tell you about it.
You're a horror veteran.
I watched this in the basement of a guy that I mean, I didn't like him. Jury's out. I think maybe he liked me. I watched it in his basement in high school.
Wow.
And his mom walked in halfway through.
Ooh.
I know.
Was she more like, don't watch that movie, or who is this woman?
She probably didn't say, who is this woman, because I was 15. But I think she walked in at one of the parts of the movie that was incredibly shocking for its time.
Oh, yep.
And I felt a lot of things about her being in the room at that point. I was like, oh, please, ma'am, Mrs.
Ma'am.
Mom, if you could exit.
If you could exit and bleach your eyes and forget I was ever here, that would be so graceful.
Please don't tell me.
Graceful.
I mean, neither one of those is really particularly the word we're looking for.
No, because you know what? I never know what word I'm looking for.
I think you do wonderfully.
Well, we'll have to ask the audience about that one, won't we, gal?
Send it in, thebloodypodcassacre@gmail.com.
Let me know how I'm talking.
So why don't we go through the plot of this, and then we will deep dive our feelings. So in Georgetown, actress Chris McNeil, who is Ellen Burstyn, is living with her 12-year-old daughter, Reagan. Chris is starring in a film about student activism that's directed by her friend, Brooke Dennings. Reagan spends a lot of time alone. She doesn't have many friends, and so after playing with a Ouija board and contacting a supposedly imaginary friend whom she calls Captain Howdy, Reagan begins acting strangely, using obscene language, and exhibiting abnormal strength alongside sporadic and strange activity in the house, like noises from up above, meaning the attic, not the Lord. One night, Chris hosts a party during which Reagan comes downstairs unannounced, tells one of the guests, who is an astronaut.
Sure.
That's one thing about this movie. Lots of characters that you're just kind of like, how do any of you know each other?
And they come and go.
Yeah, Nazi sympathizer.
Yeah, wow.
Which we focus on for 30 seconds and don't come back to.
Nope. The astronaut?
Why is he there? Anyways, Reagan comes downstairs. She looks that astronaut dead in the eyes and says, "You're going to die up there." And then she urinates on the floor. Later, Reagan's bed begins to shake violently, further adding to everyone's horror in the house. Chris consults a number of physicians, but a doctor and his associates find nothing physiologically wrong with her daughter, despite Reagan undergoing a battery of diagnostic tests. One night when Chris is out, Brooke Dennings, the director, he visits the house, and when Chris returns, she hears that he has fallen to his death from a window. Although this is assumed to have been an accident because he has a history of heavy drinking, his death is investigated by Lieutenant William Kinderman, who interviews Chris. He also consults psychiatric priest Father Damien Carras, a Jesuit priest struggling with his faith, whose struggle worsens after the death of his frail mother. The doctors, thinking that Reagan's issues are mostly psychological, recommend an exorcism be performed. Not because they think she's actually possessed, but they believe that if one believes they're possessed, they can be cured by believing that an exorcism works. So Chris arranges a meeting with Carras. After Reagan speaks backwards in different voices and exhibits scars in the form of words like "help me" on her stomach, Carras is convinced that Reagan is possessed. Believing her soul is in danger, he decides to perform an exorcism. An experienced priest, Father Marin, is selected for performing the exorcism with Carras assisting. Both priests witness Reagan perform a series of bizarre, vulgar acts. They attempt to exorcise the demon, but the stubborn entity, by then claiming to be the devil himself, toys with them, especially with Father Carras. Carras shows some emotional weakness after the demon impersonates his dead mother, and is dismissed by Marin, who attempts to exorcise the demon alone. Carras enters the room later and discovers that Marin has died, but of a heart attack, not demon attack. After failing to revive him, the enraged Karras confronts the mocking, laughing spirit and wrestles Reagan's body to the ground. At Karras's invitation, the demon leaves Reagan's body and possesses him instead. In a moment of self-sacrifice, he throws himself out the window before he can be compelled to harm Reagan, fatally tumbling down a set of stone steps and thus defeating the demon. Father Dyer, who's an old friend of Karras, happens upon the scene and administers the last rites to save his friend's soul. A few days later, Reagan, now back to her normal self, prepares to leave for Los Angeles with her mother. Although Reagan has no apparent recollection of the possession, she is moved by the sight of Dyer's clerical collar and kisses him on the cheek as what we think is a form of thank you. As the car pulls away, Chris tells the driver to stop, and she gives Father Dyer a medallion that belonged to Father Karras. After they drive off, Dyer pauses at the top of the stone steps before turning and walking away. End scene.
Cut.
I do feel, though, this is one of those movies that I love so much that having to put it into simple words like pains me.
It really is all about the detail. We watched the extended director's cut, the one that, what is it, shouldn't be seen or has never been seen before.
Something like
Some title. And having all those like little extra bits, even though it was 11 minutes of footage, really just makes the movie so much better. It just adds this layer of pizzazz, like just wonder. 10 out of 10 movie already. Like,
before we created the Podcassacre to be what it is now, we did an episode about The Exorcist that was nearly 5 hours long. That tells you everything you need to know about how much there is to know about The Exorcist.
Beyond even just the actual film itself, there's so much surrounding it, like we talked about with the marketing and how it was marketed and the set, and you could go on and on about anything in this movie, and it's just like a tree. There's one branch that leads into another that leads into another and it constantly keeps going. I
feel like for horror fanatics and even for true crime fanatics, it's a pretty well-known fact that Poltergeist has a lot of lore around it. Like, that's in the zeitgeist as being its own world, because the teenage daughter from Poltergeist was murdered in real life right after that film came out. And then a lot about the set, how they used real skeletons and stuff like that. And then there was more deaths around it, like the little girl from Poltergeist, she also died. That has become like an entity of its own. You can read books about it and stuff. I feel like The Exorcist has just as much, and yet it's not as well known that this is like its entire own universe.
Sorry, I'm still going back to, I didn't also know any of these facts about the Poltergeist.
You didn't?
No.
It's super interesting.
I'm going to have to look into this more.
Do.
Because I'm going to say it, and you're going to probably punch me across the table.
You've never seen it.
I've never seen the original. I've only seen the remake.
Ooh, the remake is not good.
Yeah. But do you know what's very interesting in relation to last week's episode? When I was thinking about Krampus, all I could think about was certain scenes from Poltergeist with the toys. And I kept interchanging them.
That is a really good point. I thought about that when I was watching it too.
Is it just because, do you think that there's this toy element and that's why?
Well, I think Poltergeist, the remake, has an actual Jack-in-the-Box in it, because the original does too, but it feels very different.
That must be why I kept thinking of Poltergeist during Krampus. But enough of that movie.
Yeah. I could go on about Poltergeist, but we'll just do it as an episode, obviously. It's also a perfect film to me. I think it's so good. But The Exorcist you could go forever about everything with this movie. So I don't really have a ton to say about my favorite scenes or anything, because this movie, there's nothing really
that's like stands out as like a standalone horrific, like there is so many horrific scenes, but I couldn't pick one. Right. Is the thing.
Yeah.
Every scene is good.
A point that you made the first time we recorded this episode that I thought was really good is that The Exorcist could be not a horror movie. It could be like a true crime thriller or something like that too.
Yeah.
It could be or just a drama, because the emotional aspect of it is so hard hitting. This movie could be so many things.
I know. Like the acting in this movie is so good. And like the script itself, and I would be interested to read the like actual novel it's based off of one day. Not anytime soon, just because I feel like I've indulged so much into Exorcist content that you told me not to, and I had to stop. I started the new TV series.
Oh, it's so bad.
And I couldn't do it. I did watch the first episode when it first aired, and I was like, oh, I'll keep up with it. Never did. And I could not finish it. But I did listen to the Exorcist theme probably for like a week.
It's a good song.
It just like really gets you going. Like on the way to work in the morning, I'm like jamming out, you know? It really just sets the tone for your day.
It does. Not to promote another podcast, but Wondery, the network Wondery, did a really good podcast. Like I think it was probably 8 or 10 episodes about The Exorcist. And it goes through so many different things. The making of the movie, the original story, because The Exorcist is based on an exorcism that happened with a young boy in like the 1950s or something like that. So they break down that story too, because it's actually not like the Exorcist novel is based on that exorcism. It's not the story that we see in this movie, but that person, the boy who was exorcised.
That's such a, when we say the word exorcised, referring to having had an exorcism is so strange, because all I can think about is the priest exorcise someone and I picture them like helping them do like physiotherapy.
Right.
It's such a strange word. English is such a weird language.
Well, I don't even know if that's the right word.
It is.
Okay.
To like have the demon exorcised out of you.
It feels right and wrong. The boy who had the demon exorcised out of him absolutely wants nothing to do with any of this.
Fair. Like,
yeah.
I wouldn't. Don't use my sad story. It's not even a sad story, but don't use my story to make yourself famous.
Well, especially from when you were a child.
And it not probably. It was
It was traumatizing?
Yeah, it was just straight up trauma for that child.
Of course. And now they're an adult who has no control over what is out there about their life.
But also, we don't know if he remembers any of it.
I think he does.
Yeah, probably hard to forget.
Yeah, probably. When The Exorcist is the biggest movie in the world.
Yeah, or like, you know, when you actually had a demon inside of you.
Yeah, I feel like that'd be a hard one to let go of.
Hear me out.
Okay.
Since Krampus is half demon, do you think he possesses people? Do you think that you could get possessed by Krampus? Because if so...
But, okay. What's the difference between a demon who...
I feel like you're setting me up for a joke.
No, I'm not. Okay, so Krampus has a physical form.
Mm-hmm.
Pazuzu, who's the demon in The Exorcist, does Pazuzu have a physical form?
I would assume so, but
because there's the statue of him.
I feel like, though, a lot of... I'm saying this as if, like, I'm friends with them and I know them, but, like, I feel like a lot of demons take the form of people, which is why they're possessing them.
Right.
And it's more just, like, their entity and spirit versus why chill in your own body?
Krampus has his own...
being.
Yeah.
And physical form.
I wouldn't think he would possess people. I think Krampus loves his Krampus body.
Yeah, he loves his little gangly fingers.
Mm-hmm. His crinkers.
His crinkers.
I think Krampus is pretty body positive.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so anyways, Wondery has a fantastic podcast about The Exorcist. Really walked us down a long path.
Remember when we were like, oh my god, the last episode was 5 hours. Now this one we're like, well, the English language actually defines an exorcism as. It comes from the language exorcisma. Just pulling that out of my ass. I have no idea.
Yeah, we're going to take you through a class on theology and English in this episode.
We were talking about how we don't really have a favorite scene in this movie, which is what we have done for the past 2 episodes with both Hereditary and Krampus, is talking about how a favorite scene from the film has affected us and had either a long-lasting impression or has changed. But I think for both of us, it's safe to say that this whole movie is one scene in itself that is just everlasting and perfect.
Let's just talk about the shit of this. It's so hard to know where to start.
We have the actual physical set, everything that happened regarding that, the actors around the set, how they were treated, how the director was legitimately insane. Was it cursed, really? Like, is this and everything surrounding The Exorcist cursed? Or was it all just coincidence?
I have a hard time believing in coincidence on this one. It's so much. Let's start with the set.
Well, first to start with the set, we had, I believe I want to say it was 6 weeks shut down due to the whole set catching on fire. They had to shut down. It set them back 6 weeks. I don't remember how many $1 million because they had to reconstruct a whole set. But essentially, they tried to blame it on a pigeon flying into a light box, causing the whole fire. No, production was shut down for 2 months, not 6 weeks. they said that it was hardly the worst that the devil, in quotes, had ever done, even though they blamed it on a pigeon. But the weird thing is that a lot of people still to this day think that this was a publicity stunt.
Oh, I've never even heard that theory.
Yeah, that the set caught on fire. Was it a demon? We'll never know. But to use it as a marketing thing.
Part of me doesn't believe that. Also, another fact about that fire that is very strange is that the entire set outside of Reagan's bedroom burnt down.
Right.
So Reagan's bedroom is, I would say, where most of the scenes take place, at the very least within the house. Within the house, Reagan, when she's possessed, is confined to her room. That's where the exorcism takes place. For some reason, it wasn't damaged in this fire.
Do you think it's because Reagan's bedroom was technically a fridge?
I don't know if it was at the time. I don't really know that freezing temperatures prevents fire either.
Yeah, that's true.
In fact, I think it does not.
I think one reason that I don't think it was a publicity stunt is because when we think about the Exorcist movie in a whole, regarding everything that happened in this movie, people did die. In my mind, thinking about, spooky things, I fully believe that this is a curse, that people died for, not for that movie, but for a reason in regarding to being in this movie. And that the set caught on fire for that.
I have a hard time believing it was a publicity stunt for the reason that that wasn't really a thing yet.
Especially when they didn't even know about the marketing after the movie.
Exactly. And I think a lot of things, we emulate things that we know are successful, but oftentimes those things are stumbled upon by accident. And then you see, that was really smart. Or that was really unfortunate, but
let's use it to our advantage.
It did this thing for us. I don't think that at the time they would have had the foresight to do this, especially because horror wasn't a celebrated genre. I don't think they predicted The Exorcist to be a huge success.
No. Well, because they only did release it in 30-some theaters because they had no idea what it was going to become, as you were saying.
That's so much of a cost as a publicity stunt.
Yes.
So another thing about the set that you just touched on is that they kept it below freezing temperatures in Reagan's bedroom. It was an actual refrigerator this room was built as. There was no way for them at the time to put CGI breath into the film, but they wanted to be able to see everyone's breath at all times. And so that was real. And everybody on set, outside of Linda Blair, who plays Reagan, the young possessed child, got sick, which is so strange.
Weird coincidence or not, what the hell? Her room doesn't catch fire. She doesn't get sick. Like, what?
Yeah.
You can't tell me that this is just a, coincidence weird, because it's not.
So the other sort of thing around this, like we said, the director is insane.
Mentally ill. I want to start off with the voice of Reagan. Or do we want to put something before that?
No, that's great. I was just going to say, I almost feel as if you and I have slightly opposing views on this.
That you don't think it was crazy?
I think it was crazy, but I don't think this was his fault.
No, but I think that he could have stopped it. I think he could have intervened and been like, this is maybe a little bit too much that you're putting on yourself. What we're talking about, the actress who played the voice of Pazuzu, but more like the voice of Linda Blair being possessed. What was her name again? Mercedes
McCambridge.
Yes. She was famous for being a radio host and was known for being on radio and being the best living radio actress. But her voice for the demonic entity that was Pazuzu, she didn't want to take away from Blair's performance, but then started to chain smoke and drink much more when she was sober for a very long time, but said, I'll do it for the movie, which, like you were saying, is mostly her doing, but I think could have stepped in and been like, you don't have to do this for a film, Oh yeah, she also swallowed raw eggs so that her voice would become this raspy, devil-like monster just to have a great vocal performance. I think that's psychotic.
Well, it is. And
I do see, though, where you're saying, sorry to cut you off.
No, it's okay.
But where you're saying this was her doing and not his.
Right.
And yes, he could have stopped it, but really at the end of the day, she's making her own decisions for who she is as a person. She did not need to swallow raw eggs or smoke or pick up drinking again. Not at all. If you're a good voice actor or a good actor in general, you do not need to have a clutch in order to perform successfully.
Right.
Well, you shouldn't have, at least.
This is something that we touched on too in Hereditary, but I don't know. I think this was just a conversation that we were having. The actor who played Peter, when he smashes his face on the desk.
Yes.
That actor was for some reason willing to break his own nose. And they were like, I think we're fine.
Yeah.
We'll put like a foam desk. And he ended up breaking his jaw.
He dislocated his jaw, yeah, because he still went too hard, even though there was a foam covering over the desk.
And I think that says more about the creative industry and the way that this sort of like tortured artist thing has become so acceptable. Mm-hmm. It's crazy, but it's hard to discern whose lead that was. So like she had been in retirement. She was not young when she did this. Mm-hmm. They basically called her out of retirement to see if she would do this. She did, but she also did it in a church.
Like, why?
And with 2 priest friends of hers there.
Bring them.
And so she had all these strange stipulations. And no, he did not stop it. But I don't really understand. Like, I have no concept of how involved he was in the actual day-to-day process of her doing this. Another thing around her and him that makes them both look a little who's to say is that there was a lot in this film around crediting that was a huge problem.
Yes.
So... Ugh. Linda Blair.
Just in the end. I really was just like, let's wrap it up right now.
Did you see the shock on my face?
Did you see the shock on my face?
You were like, you know what?
Fuck it.
So just to wrap this all up.
In the end, I like threw my hand up and you were like, whoa.
No, what were you going to say?
I was going to say, in the end, just give your credit to your people you work with, but you didn't even start talking about it. I really just wanted to jump over your part and start talking.
Was that Pazuzu?
Possibly.
Did you want to say what you're going to say?
No.
Okay, then I'll talk. I'll eat my goldfish and then I'll talk. Zach was having a moment, but it's fine. We've returned. Like I said, a lot of weird stuff around crediting in this film. So Linda Blair was nominated for Best Supporting Actress for the Academy Awards, which, as we've stated before, we don't really give a shit about the Academy. But it is really great for recognition, and that, as an actor in that field of acting, is kind of the pinnacle. It's the end-all, be-all.
Yeah.
If you win an Oscar...
Yeah, you're set.
It is important to them. Basically... She did not win, and she suffered because this director didn't do anything correctly with the crediting. So there was a woman who lightly did some of the scenes as a double. She makes up 11 seconds of screen time. She was uncredited. When the film came out and it was such a huge success, she wrote a letter to the Screen Actors Guild to see if she could publicly speak about her experiences, and she was denied. She made a big scene about it, as you would. Mm-hmm. That got back to the Academy, as did everything with Mercedes McCambridge. So the story with her is that the story is that she said that she didn't want to be credited because she didn't want to take away from Linda's performance. That she wanted it to be like a seamless thing. There was no distractions and no one thinking throughout it, oh, but that's someone else or this, that, or the other thing. So then on the day that she finally saw it in theaters, which it's unclear if this was a premiere or not, but the director was there. What the fuck is his name? William Friedkin. But William Friedkin was also there. And apparently when it was over, she stormed out and yelled at him and was like, why am I not credited? And he said, because you asked not to be. And she apparently said, I'm an actor. All I have are my credits. You can't really get a genuine read on what actually happened there.
Yeah.
Because it sounds like she was a little unsteady throughout this process, it does seem like that might have been something she would have said or wanted.
I'd believe it.
Yeah. He's also super sketchy, so it's very possible.
It could go either way.
Yeah.
In the end.
All of this ends up getting back to the Academy, and then Linda Blair's performance is completely discredited. Oh my God, the word credit is like... But her performance is discredited because there wasn't really a clear answer on how much of it was her and how much of it was other people. Mm-hmm. And that's really unfortunate. Also, Mercedes McCambridge, a couple years later, her son killed himself and his entire family.
Yep, right. Completely wiped that from my mind.
Yeah.
Once again, another just like the curse of the Exorcist film.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone who was working in relation to that film.
So he wrote a letter basically saying that Mercedes McCambridge was a super abusive, neglectful parent, that he grew up thinking basically the worst of himself. He sounds extremely mentally ill. And yeah, so at the age of 45, he killed himself, his 45-year-old wife, and then their 2 daughters, who I believe were 9 and 13 at the time. She's never spoken publicly about it.
It would be interesting to see, actually, if any of the people who worked on The Exorcist or the cast, if they still go around day to day being like, is something going to happen to me? Like, do they still have a weird lingering feeling about this movie? I'd like to know what their thoughts are, like, in the past 5 years, 10 years.
I would think no. I would think at some point you'd be like, I'm free and clear.
Yeah, you never know.
You never know. Death. Death was a big factor in this. Oh, another weird thing is that there's a couple people in this movie who are not actors. They wanted this to be very method. So one of the priests is not an actor. He was a real priest.
Yeah.
There's a lot of scenes that take place in hospitals or just like medical facilities. One of the people who played an x-ray tech?
One of the, I was going to say nurses, but maybe not a nurse.
He was a tech person of some sort. After this movie, he was not an actor, but he went on to murder someone who was a film critic.
Of course.
Why?
But also another part of like this whole method thing is that one medical scene where they're giving her is it the heart or in the neck?
In the neck.
They're giving her that procedure and they show that. I don't know if they do any more, but they did show that to a lot of like medical professionals that this is how like the procedure is actually done.
Because it was
how it was really done.
And that is actually the scene that made people ill.
Not the vomiting, no, it was the blood spurting.
They put a PICC line in and the blood legitimately spurts from her neck. The scenes in the hospital are extremely clinical and they're uncomfortable.
And they're sterile, and it's just like the coloring even of it. It's just like, it's so cold. You know that feeling of being in a hospital or being in a waiting room, just like not wanting to be there and that something uncomfortable is like gonna happen. Going to the doctor is never fun, especially when you're a child. And so you know that feeling, and that's why there's so much like eeriness when it comes to the clinical scenes, I think
that's why it's so unsettling. Another thing that they do that I didn't know that you told me about was that in the original soundtrack, they used the sound of bees.
Right.
So there's a lot of elements to this movie that is playing to your subconscious psychological self, because that is uncomfortable for you as a person to see environments that make you uncomfortable. No one likes being in a hospital. And that's what was really like getting people elevated.
Regarding the sounds, I know with like the bees, it's like triggering a fight or flight response. And so I know with the soundtrack, they like, I don't know how loud it was. I never noticed it. But like in the theaters, it was just backing like the soundtrack of like scary moments or like leading up to potentially what was a jump scare. Or I want to say there was something else that was a part of that, like traffic or something. I want to say that there was like 2 parts, like construction. Essentially, it was
the sound of metal on metal, wasn't it?
It was something.
Yeah, it was like grating metal or something like that.
It's sounds in which you know that your body is going to be triggered into a fight or flight response, and that you should be scared and that your body should be reacting in a certain way, which I think is smart. It's such a great way to add fear into a movie with having sounds that you're like, is that in the movie? Am I hearing it? And like something scary happens on the like screen. It's genius. Although I didn't notice it, which is sad, but I could have maybe if I would have watched it in the theater.
But I don't think it was made to be noticeable. I think it was just...
It's like having it like as a layer of like subconscious thinking and sounds.
Yeah. There was a couple more deaths associated with this. There was 2 actors that both died while the film was in post-production. And what makes that so strange is that both of their characters died in the movie. Linda Blair's grandfather died while they were shooting. Max von Sydow, who plays Father Merrin, his brother died on his first day of shooting. Also while filming, the son of Jason Miller, who played Father Damien Cross, he was nearly killed because he was hit by a motorcycle. He survived.
Thank goodness.
But that's insane.
The trauma that all of these actors were personally going through, but then also probably from knowing what's happening around them, would be traumatic in trying to shoot a movie. And then they just kept going. And then also everything else happening on top of it with like the fire. If I was in that movie, I'd be like, I'm out.
Yeah.
kill me off in the movie.
I'm done.
Let me go. Mm-hmm. Even if I was Linda Blair, I'd be like, get me out of here.
They could have easily put a double in for her. Her face was so unrecognizable. Do you want to talk about some injuries?
Sure.
Okay, there's 2 things about this movie that in retrospect, I loathe. And they kind of put a spin on the movie that I don't love. So one of the things is that Ellen Burstyn, who plays the mom, Chris McNeil, there's this sequence where Reagan throws her against a wall. So she's wearing a harness. The harness jerked her too hard, and she fell and received a permanent spinal injury. She screams, obviously, because she was in
immense
excruciating pain and has lived with this injury for the rest of her life. It still affects her to this day. That is the scene that's in the movie because her scream was so genuine.
It's like, well, yeah, she's literally injured, and it's like a cry for help. And they're like,
And something about that is just so upsetting to me.
Well, it's because you're watching real pain for your own entertainment. When you find that out, it feels wrong because you're like, I shouldn't be celebrating or being like, wow, that was such a good scene for watching somebody else actually be in pain.
Right. You watch movies because it's harmless entertainment.
Yes. And
I didn't consent to watching someone get legitimately hurt.
No.
I'm not out here trying to watch snuff films.
No, thank you.
And Linda Blair also was injured at one point. I can't remember exactly what happened, but she was also on a harness and some piece of it came loose. Some piece of metal was hitting her a bunch. And in the scene, she's supposed to be yelling at her mom, like, make it stop, make it stop. And so she was actually yelling. And they didn't know that because they thought she was acting.
Ugh. I feel like there's a bunch of movies where I know also of that happening, but I cannot name a single one right now off the top of my head.
Have you watched Black Bear yet? The new Aubrey Plaza movie?
No, I haven't.
It's so good. And a big plot point in that movie is essentially that she is being psychologically manipulated and abused into giving a performance for a film. It's so hard to watch because you don't imagine that those things happen, but they do.
Mm-hmm. One thing that I want to give kudos to The Exorcist about is, even though we did talk about it being the blueprint and it being this, not stone, what's the word I'm looking for other than blueprint? A synonym for blueprint, insert synonym for blueprint here.
Foundation.
Yes, it's the foundation of what we have right now. The Exorcist set the trend for it being the first horror movie to have a sequel, which I've never seen the sequels. I've heard that they are not great, but they're also like standalone films.
I've heard that the third one is a standalone film, and apparently it's very good. The second one, however, I've not heard great things about.
Well, if anybody wants to let us know if they've seen the second and third or however many there are, do you recommend them? Should we watch them? Let us know. But there was movies before that came out like Rosemary's Baby, which didn't have a sequel. Nosferatu didn't have a sequel, which was a big horror movie before then. Night of the Living Dead. But now we have the Conjuring universe. We have 9 Saw movies. We have, you name it, Wrong Turn. They've taken like 7 of them now. Mm-hmm. So it's amazing to be like, this was the movie that started it all. But it also was the movie that started this whole marketing, even though they didn't do it and we mentioned it. But more deep with The Exorcist is people were fainting, people were vomiting, there was panic attacks, but some people even reported that they had miscarriages after watching this movie, which is, well, it's obviously not related to the movie, but it could be stress from watching the movie in some relation. You never know.
Okay.
Medical researchers eventually gave this effects from watching a scary movie called cinematic neurosis, which is really interesting. To also be like, The Exorcist gave this new medical term because people were experiencing all these things watching the film is insane. Mm-hmm. But then we have movies like The Conjuring, which they put out posters saying like, people have been falling ill, getting possessed. I remember like on Twitter, like back in 2013, seeing these poster boards on stands warning people about going and seeing The Conjuring. It's weird that you have to market it that way now because they didn't have to. It just happened. But what was another movie that... Veronica on Netflix. Marketed as the scariest movie. People could not finish it. It was terrifying. People were, etc., etc. Boring.
That is one way to ensure you fail. Because don't tell me how I'm going to feel about the movie. Mm-hmm.
If you're giving your viewers this expectation that you are claiming it's the scariest movie of all time, to you maybe, it's not going to be to us as viewers at all.
That's an impossible standard.
We also all have such different views on what we deem as scary.
Yeah, entirely.
Don't try me with that shit. Veronica team.
A movie that I find genuinely upsetting, that I feel upset thinking about, The Grinch.
Like the live action one or the cartoon?
The live action one with Jim Carrey. And I know that sounds like a joke. It's not. I hate it. I hate it.
It's interesting because I also feel the same way as you. Like, I don't really care for the live action Grinch. Like, it's just not it. But we love Cat in the Hat.
Love it. Okay, there's actually a lot of very unsettling stuff about the Grinch, the live action Grinch. But that's the thing that we were talking about before. It's not the content. It's how you feel about it. Veronica, absolutely disappointing.
It's just another general scary movie. Your classic jump scares, your classic possession. It's just everything that every other scary movie had. It was nothing new. Other than that, it was in Spanish and I had to read subtitles.
Which I do love.
Me too. I love a good subtitle.
There is another movie called Veronica, which is confusing. It's also Spanish.
I do know that there is 2 Veronicas. There's the one that was the Spanish one, marketed as the scariest movie ever with the nuns in the basement. But I do remember that there was another movie called Veronica, but why can I not think of what it's about?
I told you about it. You've never seen it.
Oh, that's why. Is it a horror movie?
It is.
Okay.
And I was just about to say, it was very good. I just got to reviews. 1 star. In the title, Bad Mexican Movie. It's not. It's very good. If you're going to watch a Veronica film, watch that one. Don't watch the other one. That's all I have to say about that.
That's fine. Thank you. So overall, this whole thing that The Exorcist set up for what we have now, we should be thankful.
I am.
Okay, I'm glad. But I'm just saying that not you and I as
Everybody.
a horror collective should be thankful.
Someone recently asked on Twitter if the classics are worth it in terms of building your view of horror. We've had this discussion before, that there are movies that set the foundation, like Rosemary's Baby. I don't like that movie.
Absolutely boring.
Do I feel happy I've seen it? Sure. It's one of those things where I would be curious about it until I've seen it, so why not watch it? I've seen worse. The Exorcist it holds up in so many ways.
Yes.
It is what you want it to be, in my opinion.
And for its time, now being in 2020, miraculous. Like, I've seen online since we recorded our first episode that they are planning on remaking it.
I don't want them to do that.
I really don't want them to do it either because it's just going to take all of the, like... It sounds like someone's starting to start their car.
What the fuck was that?
I don't know.
That sounded like metal on metal. I'm not kidding, it did.
The Exorcist? I don't remember what I was just talking about. Redoing The Exorcist, absolutely do not stand by this. The original is perfect. Without CGI, because that's what it's going to be now.
Yeah.
They're not going to do what they did 30, 40 years ago. That's longer than that.
It is. God, I hate time.
Me too. Time is a weird, weird thing.
Actually, I think it's 44 years old. Anyways, it doesn't really matter.
I don't want to see this movie redone with the CGI and magic of computers.
Not at all.
It's just, they tried it with the TV series. It obviously didn't work. Although I do love that one scene where the iris splits into 2 and we have 2 separate eyeballs. I don't know if you ever saw that scene, but that was really good. I think it was even in the trailer.
That actually came out quite some time ago. I watched the full first season.
There's 2.
I know. I didn't watch the second.
Yeah. I don't want to see it redone.
No.
I'm also so tired.
Just in general.
Yeah, I'm just exhausted, baby. We're remix over here. We're working. We're staying home. It's exhausting. But I am tired of seeing all these remakes of old movies.
Me too. Come up with a new idea.
Yeah, come up with something special. Can you come up with something else?
And it's not even about, but I know what the ending is. There's plenty of movies that I watch on repeat all the time. I don't care about knowing what the ending is.
No.
It's that The Exorcist as it stands needs no more, it needs no less. So just leave it. Let it be its thing.
Well, that's like, I think we've talked about this. I don't know if it's on the podcast. I hated the new It remakes. I felt like it didn't need to be done because it wasn't scary. I think we talked about it in our first recording of The Exorcist. I think that the original version, yes, it's a little cheesy. It still stands up. It's still scary. That's what I'm scared about The Exorcist. Like, if it does happen to be remade, it'll just be laughable.
I care less about how the film turns out as much as I do about it tainting the name of something that's so great.
Yes. And it also will be, unfortunately, if it does get made, will be the first time that a lot of people hear of what, like, The Exorcist is. People don't know that there is an original It. Younger people, I'm saying. And that it was, like, a TV movie at first.
God, it's good. I rewatched it recently, and
Ugh.
I mean, Tim Curry is the only
yes.
Pennywise there needs to be.
There was one summer where I watched it every like couple of like weeks.
You get more of a sense that Beverly is a real floozy in that one. The adult Beverly. You're like,
Yes.
fucking relax, homie.
Yes.
Do you
Oh my
have to make
God.
out with all of the boys from your hometown?
Every friend you ever made when you were a child.
Truly. She's like, you also, and you.
Pennywise, come here.
Get in here.
And then also like Ben Haskell, like I love him in the original.
Who
the
does he
child.
play?
He's the one who's in love with Beverly Marsh.
Oh, yeah. So cute.
Love him.
I do like the remake. I also didn't.
I think the casting was great.
Yeah.
But that's it.
There's something about remaking something, say the company has the rights to it, and all the people who were formerly involved in the original, those people kind of having a claim to it, but not really, not having a say in that makes me sad. Because imagine being a part of something that was so amazing, so life-changing and revolutionary in the world of film, and then you just see some fucking garbage remake come out. I would just be so upset.
I'd be so mad.
Yeah.
I think a great example of a remake in like the recent years and how they changed it completely is the Sabrina the Teenage Witch series. Because it was this 90s campy comedy, 20 minutes, and they turned it into this like dark horror. Even though, yes, it's still marketed towards teenagers, they really flipped the script on that. And it's because it feels original. It's a new story. If they redo The Exorcist, it's going to be the same story.
That's kind of how I feel. Like, if you're going to do it, using the namesake is one thing. Using the characters, don't try to make it what it was.
Like, and what's the point?
What is the point?
Nothing other than to make yourself money.
Which is just gross. That's all it is.
Just respect the classic and leave it at that. In which everybody should be respecting the original Exorcist because knocked it out of the park.
Yep. Let's rate it.
Scary level. What do you think?
The effects stand up. They're very good. But this movie isn't really scary to me.
No.
And it wasn't the first time I saw it. I would say like a 4.
I was going to say probably a 4 out of 5.
Yeah.
Like
4 out of 5?
no, 4.25.
Oh.
It has its moments. Like, it's definitely scary. But, like, it's not something where I was like, ugh. Like, other than the scene with the crucifix, that was just unsettling more so than scary.
Yeah. Next rating.
Next,
Unsettling.
7 or 8. Maybe even a 9.
I told you this, that when I watched it, it wasn't the first time I'd seen it. I didn't anticipate feeling scared by it. I'm not a person who has any fear of the dark. Don't care. Whatever. It's fine. And I like to wear my noise-canceling headphones and dance it out. That's my thing. That's my nightly routine. I often do that in the dark. And that night, I was standing in my room, putting my noise-canceling headphones on to do my little floor routine. And I all of a sudden was like, oh no. And I never feel that way. But
That's
I was
so
just
weird.
like,
And
I
this was
can't.
after you...
Yeah. I just felt suddenly so unnerved being in the dark, not being able to hear. My senses just kind of I was like, okay, you know what? Not tonight.
Dance routine can wait till
Yeah.
tomorrow. That's so weird.
And it wasn't any one thing. With Hereditary, I talked about how if I was walking through a doorway, I had this feeling of, oh, there's going to be something in the roof.
Yeah.
It wasn't that. There was nothing. It was just that feeling in my body
Of being like, ooh, something is not right.
yeah, I'm just feeling real aware.
And then overall, the story. What do you think?
Engaging. Oh my God.
Yes.
9.
Yes, I would say 9 or 10.
Yeah. I'm scared to
just-
give anything a
I
penultimate
know.
10.
I know. Right now, you're right. We'll stick with like a 9.
Yeah.
There is some parts. I do feel it was lengthy.
It's a long movie.
Yes. And like some of the story parts, you're like, you could just introduce this character and I wouldn't care. Giving Father Marin the whole beginning, you know, that's where it kind of loses the 1 extra point to a 10.
But for me, that increases the score because we care about everyone. We
Yeah.
know there is a story for almost everyone. This movie somehow perfectly pulls off everyone having a backstory and there being multiple storylines that integrate into one thing sort of seamlessly, which can be hard.
And they all have conclusion, which is rare. Yeah, you're right. Sometimes a lengthy one is good. I change my mind every 5 seconds on this podcast. And I'm okay with
This
it.
is about learning and growing.
Yes.
Yeah.
And what are we here to do? Teach.
So,
Overall, was it a paper cut or was it a full bloody massacre? See, I think it's fair for you because, unfortunately, we did not, in Krampus, compare it to what our favorite scary movie is right now.
but my favorite is
The Exorcist. So,
Full massacre.
it's a full massacre for you.
It is.
I think it's like a car crash in which you don't want to look away, but you're like intrigued by. It's like gruesome and you're like, But I don't think it's a full massacre. Like everyone survived in the car crash.
Oh.
Like it's like, oh, it looks bad. Nobody's breathing, but they all survived.
That's
how I feel.
That's a lower score than I would have anticipated.
Right now, we know Midsommar
That's true.
is my full... It's just everything near and dear to my heart.
It's everything you need it to be.
Yes.
And that's what The Exorcist is for me. Beautiful.
Well, thank you so much once again for listening to our voices babble on about horror movies.
If you want, you can follow us on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter at Podcassacre. If you have any suggestions or any thoughts, feelings, or opinions, you can send them to thebloodypodcassacre at gmail.com.
Or slide into our DMs. We're always ready for a message.
Until next time.
What a wonderful day for an exorcism.